If I was asked to describe a model occupational therapist, what would I say? I would describe someone who is occupation-based, who really understands how integral occupation to health is, and I can't move it. Move this stupid thing. How integral occupation is to health, and has a passion for the value and power of occupational therapy. I would pick somebody who cares deeply about people. I would describe someone who is a genuine person with integrity. Who she is as a person and who she is as an occupational therapist are virtually inseparable. I would describe a leader, one who takes initiative to work towards what she values, who is looked up to as someone who stands up for things that are worthwhile and affirming to others. I would describe a visionary, one who is not bound by always viewing the world as it has been, but has an acute view of how it can be. I would describe a problem solver who has the remarkable ability to look at and solve complex problems. I would pick someone with immense spirit who radiates her passion for her work. It would be someone who is generous, who does not closely guard her talents and work out of self-interest, but freely shares what she has so others can flourish. I would describe a warm, kind person who is a joy to work with. Of course, I am describing our beloved Sue Bazyk. She is all these things and more. Just to give you a flavor for what she has accomplished in the years that she has been an occupational therapist and a professor here at CSU. She was a COTA when she first graduated from Tri-C. She went on to become an OTR by getting a bachelor's degree at Ohio State University. She earned a master's degree at the University of Florida. We know how many great people came from Florida. In 2005, she was awarded a PhD from Capella University. She is a full professor here at CSU. Her awards and honors include a Distinguished Faculty Award. This is for the whole university. A Fellow of the American Occupational Therapy Association. She received the Award of Merit from the Ohio Occupational Therapy Association, which is the highest award given by this group. She recently received the Height Award. The Ohio State University Department of Occupational Therapy gives this award for contributions to the profession. And she was given the Healthcare Heroes Award from Crane's Cleveland Business, honoring individuals who are providing exceptional service and dedication to Northeast Ohio's healthcare sector. She has authored 2 books. She has had a grant from the Ohio Department of Education for $720,000. She has authored 28 refereed articles and 6 book chapters. She has given numerous presentations. Her biggest accomplishment, from my perspective, excuse me, is that she raised 2 wonderful children. And helped to provide them and me a loving home. I watched Sue prepared for tonight's presentation. One would think that since she has presented all over the country, she would simply pull out what she has already done and run it by us. Oh no, not Sue. The teacher, the leader, the visionary in her could not pass up an opportunity to urge us to move toward an ever better profession and a more just view of how we serve the community. She is that kind of person. I love and deeply admire Sue. just because she is my wife, but for the accomplished professional woman she is. I give you Sue Bazyk.
Well, I've been attending these Distinguished Speaker Days for a long time and always wondered what it would be like to have to speak after John. He's so eloquent, and now I know. Oh, well. This is an amazing honor, and to see all of my colleagues, my friends, it's just amazing, and it really is an honor to be here. I care about each and every one of you. So I do want to say thank you, John, for your constant support as I work and work away, the gift of sharing our life together and our passion for OT. It's been truly a wonderful blend. Thank you to the OT faculty. You really are my OT family at CSU, and I cherish our collegiality and love working with each and every one of you. Of course, I thank all of my students, my current students and past students, for always challenging me with the one question, how do you make a good OT? So my challenge is how to teach you so you truly represent and reflect both the art and the science of practice. And finally, I do want to acknowledge Andrew and Audrey. I'm not going to make you stand up, but I want to thank you for sharing your development with everybody oh gosh, now I've got John on me here. For sharing your development and the videos over the years, probably to hundreds of students. They learned about oral motor and feeding, fine motor, sensory processing, and play development. They know which one of you has a thumb wrap and when tongue lateralization and chewing developed. So I'm not going to make you stand up, but anybody who learned from Andrew and Audrey, please just raise your hands, and I want you to turn around and see. We're talking a lot of people. Now, I've been meaning to ask you if it was okay that I show, later. Before I continue, I'd like to thank the OTs who really worked hard to give you the information that you have in your bags tonight, the folders, and put it all together. So Rachel Dolish, Michelle Worth, Alicia Vale, Jen Sabo, and Alyssa Chandler. And of course, I want to thank Sue Wayne for her ability to always orchestrate such a wonderful event. Okay, so now let's start. Well, 15 minutes late, but I timed it 15 minutes short, so we should be good. In the bag, by the way, you received a folder including AOTA's distinct value statement that I'll be talking about, a handout on everyday strategies for how to promote mental health and the people you work with the people you work with, a paper to take notes in case you want to take notes, and a bookmark. And so my hope is that you'll use these materials after tonight to really keep learning and applying what I'm going to be talking about in practice. So on this slide, there's 3 logos on the bottom, and these 3 logos reflect my collective work as a professor of OT here at CSU, as well as my collaboration, my close collaboration with AOTA over the years, and then, of course, the development of Every Moment Counts. Although I'm the distinguished speaker this year, I have to say I share this with my OT colleagues. I share this with the many OTs who are doing this work in the field. My OT change leaders from Every Moment Counts, a lot of them sitting in the front, and those who have recently begun to work with me with AOTA's distinct value statement related to mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention. So I thank you for your leadership and practice because you are doing what I'm going to be talking about, and that's what really matters, doing this work in the field. Okay, so I'll be talking about our distinct value in mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention across the lifespan in every single practice setting. That's really what we need to do. I'm going to be talking about my journey over the last 16 years involving questioning and concerns about what we're doing as OTs, which resulted in lots of reading and reflection, which resulted in publications and presentations, which resulted in collaboration with OT practitioners to build capacity, and eventually innovation related to OT's role in mental health. And I have to say, in thinking about my work over the past 16 years, and even though getting an award where you don't have to give a talk is really a lot easier, but I have to say that preparing for this really did force me to sit down and think about what has driven my work and where we've come along the way. So the ultimate drive is to help OTs reclaim our mental health roots in every single area of practice. And I believe very strongly that this is what OTs want to do. But we need sometimes strategies to think about how to do this. My ultimate dream, before I die, and hopefully very soon, is that every OT will be able to complete this sentence. I address the mental health needs of the people I serve by. You'll be able to complete that sentence, you'll be able to articulate it, and actually do this in practice. That is my dream. So as you hear me talk tonight, if you have ideas of what you're doing, of what you would like to do, please write them down. So I am going to start out with a little history because in honor of our upcoming centennial in 2017, I do want to take a moment to think about our historical roots. And they did start in mental health, as we all know. Those of you who aren't OTs, maybe you didn't know this. But in 1913, Adolf Meyer, who was a psychiatrist, and he was the chair of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University, he became the director of Henry Phipps Psychiatric Clinic, which was the very first inpatient hospital in the US for people with mental illness, to really help cure them or to help them get better. Eleanor Clark Slagle was the director of that program. And she did a lot of work with using activities, meaningful activities to help in the recovery process, and advocated for a balance of play, work, and rest. They called this habit training. And now today, it's interesting, we're seeing literature talking about healthy habits. So things are coming around again. They really began to explore this relationship between what people do every day and how it affects how they feel and function. And so together, they really conceptualized occupational therapy. And Adolf Meyer wrote a paper on the philosophy of occupational therapy that you all read, I'm sure. So the whole relationship is that engagement in meaningful occupations and enjoyable occupations help promote mental health. So that was in a psychiatric setting. But our early leaders also believed in the value of occupation in promoting health and preventing mental ill health. Early leaders worked in community centers, settlement houses, and based on this value of social justice, they helped people at the time participate in occupations that would help them be healthy. And the stressors at the time were stressors from immigration, industrialization, and poverty. And William Rush Dunton, he is considered the father of occupational therapy. He wrote a lot about the value of occupation and how therapeutic use of occupation helps promote health and prevent ill health. And he developed a creed that I have here, that occupation is as necessary to life as food and drink, that every human being should have both physical and mental occupation, and that all people should have occupations which they enjoy. It's a wonderful creed. So let's jump ahead 100 years. We're going to be celebrating our centennial. And this is Amy Lamb, Dr. Amy Lamb, who is our incoming president. She's been working over the last 2 years to develop this distinct value statement with occupational therapists across the country. And the purpose of the statement is to articulate our distinct value in all practice areas. And I think this statement does ring true to what our founders planned and decided that we would do as occupational therapists. The statement is, Occupational therapy's distinct value is to improve health and quality of life through participation and engagement, Larry, in occupations, the meaningful, necessary, and familiar activities of everyday life. So I was asked about a year and a half ago to join a work group for one of the practice areas on mental health to develop collateral materials. So my work group was myself, Judy Gagné, and Celeste Janskuski, and I had an advisory group. So you have this distinct value document in your folder. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this later. But first, I want to go back to kind of 16 years ago. And I was thinking, although I always felt committed to the psychosocial needs of children and families that I served, I think my more focused emphasis on children's mental health began in 2000. I was invited to be a part of a think tank meeting at AOTA with about 20 other OTs, academics, and clinicians from around the country to really talk for 2 days. We were held up in a room. It was a great, great thing. To talk about OT's role in addressing the mental health needs of children and youth. So that was in 2000, and the impetus was the Surgeon General's first report on mental health. So this is the first ever report that was groundbreaking on mental health. Over 400 pages. We read the report, not every page, but the purpose of this was really to raise awareness about what we need to be doing in mental health, because mental illness is the second leading cause of disability, with 1 in 5 children and adults experiencing mental health disorders, and most, experiencing symptoms by the age of 24. Okay, so a lot happening during adolescence and early adulthood. But many people not receiving the services they need for mental health challenges. And this report called for action to reduce stigma and to increase awareness and attention to promotion and prevention. So we talked about where are we in this, and we realized that we had a long way to go. Most of the literature at that time were chapters and articles about how to work with children who already were diagnosed with a mental illness. And we realized that we need to be really thinking more about promotion and prevention. So this resulted, this meeting, in me really thinking about and being challenged related to the words mental health, which I'm going to talk about, how to reframe our understanding of mental health, how to apply a public health approach to mental health, to build capacity of OTs to do this work, which eventually led to innovation that we're seeing today in practice with Every Moment Counts and this distinct value statement. So I'm going to talk about each of these. Let's start with the challenge of words. Meaning and use of the words mental health. I like this quote. Not all words fit their meanings. Sometimes what is said is not what is meant, and what is meant is left unsaid. I think this happens a lot with the words mental health. It happens a lot when I talk to people about my work. For example, just last Saturday at the Y, I was talking to one of my friends and she said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "I'll probably be doing some writing." And she said, "About what?" And I said, "Children's mental health." And she said, "Oh, that's so sad." So what do you think happened? She's thinking mental illness, right? So let's break down these words. So we can just take the word health. Let's think of their definitions, the images that they evoke, and the emotions that they evoke. We take the word health, we all know what that is. It's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of illness or infirmity. That's from 1946, the World Health Organization. So I did a little experiment. I love Google, okay? How many people love Google? I decided I'm going to plug in the words health and people and see what I come up with. Okay, and this is what we get. We get lots of images of happy people eating healthy food, exercising, biking as a family. Everybody's happy and they look healthy. So the images match the definition. Okay, let's add the word mental. Mental health. Well, we haven't always had a definition of mental health. It used to be mental hygiene. But this is a definition from 1999, the Surgeon General. It's a state of successful performance of mental function resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with others, and the ability to adapt to change and cope with adversity. So this is what mental health is. Okay, so let's add the word mental to health and people. Let's see what kind of images came up. And this is what comes up. The majority of images represent people who don't look like they're very mentally healthy, not really fitting with the definition, who may be depressed or anxious. And so we see words like anxiety, grief, phobia, stress. And maybe once in a while I would catch a picture of people who look like they're mentally healthy or happy. So why is this? Why is it when we add mental to health that it's often interpreted as services for those with mental illness? And part of the reason I got from some of my reading is that our research and practice has focused very heavily on healing pathology, on reducing cases of mental illness, and not so much on how to help people be mentally healthy. So sometimes I even see organizations avoid the words mental health altogether, like AOTA. We decided to call mental health many, many years ago. We would refer to it as psychosocial function. SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, uses the terminology behavioral health. I don't like that at all. Someone can have really good behavior, but not really be mentally healthy. You know, they may have some internalizing disorders. And then the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services uses mental and emotional well-being. So why is it? Why do we avoid it? And I think it goes back to stigma, partially due to stigma. And what is stigma? It's negative attitudes, discrimination, and shame leading to secrecy. So there's still lots of secrecy related to mental illness. Here's a quote by Gullickson on her brother's schizophrenia. For me, stigma means fear, resulting in a lack of confidence. Stigma is not having access to resources. It's lowered family self-esteem and intense shame, resulting in decreased self-worth. Stigma is secrecy. Stigma is anger, resulting in distance. Most importantly, stigma is hopelessness, resulting in helplessness. So, we have to think about stigma, and even today we have to fight it because stigma influences a lot. The emotions that we attach to the words mental health as well as mental illness. And it does influence policy, funding, and ultimately the lives of people who have a mental illness. And so there are lots of issues about families and people not seeking services because of the stigma. So one of the things I want you all to do when you leave here tonight is to really take a pledge to fight stigma through the National Association on Mental Illness, NAMI. You can go there. It only takes a minute. I mean, is this going to change the world? No. But learn a little bit about ways you can fight stigma. Educating yourself and others about mental health and mental illness. Talking openly about mental health. Making it a part of the fabric of our conversations every day. As much, we talk about physical health a lot, eating healthy. We need to talk about the importance of mental health. Seeing the person, not the illness, using respectful language, avoiding words like crazy, taking advocacy action and advocating for mental health reform. So go to AOTA's website routinely, learn about what policies are up and how you can support policies. Just a couple weeks ago, the Senate passed a Mental Health Reform Act, which has allowed now OT education programs to be added to the list to receive funding for training grants. So be informed. Another thing, mental health first aid. How many have heard of mental health first aid courses? Okay, there are adult courses and youth courses that have come to our country from Australia. That's why you see the koala bear there. So you might want to bring a mental health first aid course to your facility or your community or your church or whatever. Start to inform others about mental health. The youth mental health first aid courses have come to our state and are being rolled out through Project Aware. Ohio received a grant. And actually Becky Moeller, another OT from Sendero, and myself are certified youth mental health first aid trainers, and we do trainings in Northeast Ohio. It's been a great experience really for letting people know about OT. Most people don't know we have a background in mental health, but also to teach people who are non-mental health providers about identifying signs and symptoms of mental illness or suicide, how to be a first responder, and how to connect people with the help they need. Teachers love these courses, so bring one of these courses to your facility. So, getting back to words then, what words should we use? I do recommend using the words positive mental health. And John has questioned me and says, why do you have to say positive? Mental health is positive. I think we do because of the misconception that when we use the word mental health, people think we're talking about mental illness. So I recommend using positive mental health. And part of this does come from positive psychology. So positive psychology is a sub-area of psychology that was launched in 2000 by Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi. So it was in the American Psychologist Journal that they really started saying, why don't we have an area of study that focuses on the presence of something positive, positive mental health, and not just the absence of illness. And that resulted in an explosion of research in practice related to positive mental health, which I'm going to talk about a little more. So then, what happens when we add the word positive to mental health and do a Google search? And this is what we get. I was absolutely tickled. Some of you may recognize this poster on my door. And this was, I will embarrass Audrey, this was Audrey's graphic design. But I'm tickled. What we did in 2011 as a part of Every Moment Counts, actually it was 2012, we decided to do something locally for Mental Health Awareness Day. And I went to Audrey's high school at the time, her graphic design class, and taught the students about positive mental health and how to take care of your mental health. And their assignment was to make bookmarks and posters that would reflect this. That's a mental health literacy strategy, and this is what we get. So Google positive mental health, and you're going to see it. But the other students in her class came up with wonderful posters as well, and we have these on our website, Every Moment Counts. So the other thing you could do is do something in your places of work. Do something in your churches, your communities, to raise awareness of mental health, and not just focus on how to prevent mental illness. Focus on ways that we can help foster positive mental health. It's really educating others. So if you go to SAMHSA and NAMI, both have Mental Health Awareness Day materials. Okay, now another problem with our use of words is using words like mental health to define practice areas. You know, we have practice areas in OT that are listed here. I have them as silos. And practice areas are really developed to help, I think, organize the mass volumes of information so we can easily access them. But I really think in delineating our practice areas, we have in fact created silos that have limited us in reflecting our full scope of practice. Because in working with children and youth, we really need to be thinking also about health and wellness and mental health. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about framing theory. I hope this isn't too boring for you, but I think this is very interesting. Has anybody heard of framing theory? Those of you in communications and sociology? Framing theory really represents, and frames are these organizing principles that are socially shared, persist over time, and provide a way to structure our social world. We have to think about how we frame mental health, because how stories are told or how they are formed has a power influence on in assigning responsibility for an issue or a problem. And I've got a really important quote at the bottom by this Bazyk person. How OTs think about mental health has a power influence on how our services are perceived, articulated to others, and implemented. And so I have an example, another example. I was at a bakery this time, ran into an OT, and she said, "What kinds of things are you doing lately?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing work related to mental health." And she goes, "I thought you worked in pediatrics." So this again, does that happen a lot? So this again is this whole concept of how we frame and the words we use. So if OT and mental health is narrowly defined as services for people diagnosed with mental illness, receiving services in traditional mental health settings, then OT and mental health will be limited to a very small area of practice, basically about 3% of OTs. And this is not good. What about the 97% of other OTs working in other practice areas? Are they owning mental health, and are they truly reflecting this in their practice? So there is this practice gap. We need a framework for articulating and providing OT services across all practice areas. In fact, a study recently by Nielsen and Hector surveyed OTs in school-based practice on whether they address mental health or not. And they found that OTs do have a knowledge of mental health, but struggle to integrate it into practice, that they're committed to holistic practice. But what they did in addressing mental health was largely an underground or hidden practice. And if it's underground and hidden, then nobody knows that we have a background in mental health and that we do, in fact, do work to help people be mentally healthy. So this is the gap. And about from 2005 to the present, I immersed myself in reading current research related to these topics here outside of the field of OT: positive psychology, school mental health literacy, and a public health approach to mental health, which actually some of the earliest writings on a public health approach to mental health came out in 2000, the World Health Organization. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we can apply this in OT practice in our framework. And I talked to people. Sometimes you have to really put yourself out there. I have colleagues and friends at AOTA and began saying, you know, we need to catch up here. All of our publications are still stuck in treating dysfunction. You know, we've got to make a switch. So I had an opportunity to edit a book, and it's the book in the middle that is probably the most near and dear publication. This book we've used all over Ohio and the country in really providing this public health approach to mental health, a guiding framework for OT. And then after that came the practice guideline that really looked at research to support intervention at the 3 tiers, and we have a toolkit, school mental health toolkit that applies this framework. So I'm just going to spend a little time for those of you who aren't familiar with this book to share some foundation information. I love the work by Corey Keyes. Corey Keyes is a sociologist and psychologist and a major contributor to positive psychology. And he talks about a continuum of mental health. We're not talking black or white, mental ill health or mental health, but there's a continuum. And there's a stage when people are becoming unwell. He describes and states that mental health and mental illness are different states of functioning, that the absence of mental illness doesn't imply the presence of mental health. For example, someone who doesn't have a mental illness but shows low levels of affective well-being and positive functioning are really languishing in life. They're not doing so hot. And when he's done large population studies, productively or functionally, they don't do so well. On the other end, people with positive mental health or flourishing, that's really, really good mental health, have high levels of affective well-being and positive functioning. with or without the presence of mental illness. So people with a mental illness can actually move toward this positive mental health and flourishing by engaging in some of the activities that I'll be talking about. Corey Keyes also, he stated that we have a DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that lists every mental illness and lots of symptoms associated with mental illness. But where is positive mental health listed in the symptomatology associated with positive mental health? And the field of positive psychology really gave us this information that there are dimensions associated with positive mental health, such as positive affect and emotional state, feeling good emotionally, positive psychological and social function, enjoying fulfilling relationships, and thinking effectively throughout the day in order to get your work done, doing well functionally in daily activities, and lastly, but very importantly, coping with life stressors. We all have to cope with stressors during our life, and certainly the clients that we serve have pretty major stressors often, so really having to deal with a lot of coping. So what I'm going to have you do, and I always do this because I think it's important, I want you to think about the signs of mental health and tune into the dimensions of mental health. And I'm going to share some pictures as a way to highlight the wonderful work that we do at Cleveland State in service learning and in research of some of the programs that we provide. So these are children engaging in a game at Friendly Inn in our after-school program, the OT Groups for Hope. Robin's work at Eliza Bryant, lifestyle redesign, promoting well elderly. So tune into what they're doing and their faces. Sue Wayne developed a program that we've been running at the County Board of DD and Adult Services, promoting quality of life. Beth Eckelman has worked with males with spinal cord injuries at Buckeye Wellness and really looking at the impact of being a part of a wellness and fitness activities in the community. And of course, every moment counts. Embedded classroom strategies for calming, refreshing recess, and creating a comfortable cafeteria. So when we think about mental health, that was interesting. When we think about mental health, okay, what do we think of? I'm going to have to reboot here. Let's see how Sue copes with this one. So far, so good. I know, my computer's been doing this. Okay, I think I'm back. It's a ghost. Okay, are we back? Good. Signs of mental health, what people are doing and their affect. So these are things that we can do every day as we interact with the people we serve, tuning into their mental health. We also have to keep in mind that mental health is a dynamic state of functioning that is influenced by genetic predisposition, a family history of mental illness, as well as situational stressors. So situational stressors like loss of function, injury, illness, trauma. Again, I believe every OT is working in settings where we're working with people who are dealing with lots of loss. Disability. Children with disabilities have a higher incidence or comorbidity of mental health challenges than their non-disabled peers. And so the list goes on, many situational stressors. And so what we have to do as healthcare providers is really be vigilant and watch for changes in thinking, behavior, and mood, and really encourage early identification and intervention as much as possible. Another part of the book really discusses then this public health approach to mental health, how to address the mental health needs of all persons, which involves both promotion of mental health as well as early identification and intervention. And this framework can be depicted as a pyramid representing the whole population. So Tier 1 services focus on how to promote positive mental health in everyone, people at risk, as well as those with mental health challenges. Tier 2 would be your targeted interventions, and then Tier 3 would be your intensive interventions. And so it's really important for us to distinguish these different types of interventions, with promotion interventions focusing on, again, how to help people be mentally healthy and maintain their mental health. So mental health literacy, teaching coping strategies, and strength-based approaches. Tier 2 would be those prevention activities, which could be accommodations that you make at the places you work to help people function, or small group interventions. And then Tier 3 are your intensive individualized interventions to decrease symptoms as well as to promote mental health. So I'm going to spend the most time really on Tier 1 because in my work, I find in my work in schools that people talk about interventions for those with mental health challenges. There are programs that target prevention. But people kind of mention mental health promotion, but a lot of people aren't really doing anything specific. But there is actually really great literature on how to do mental health promotion based on research from the field of positive psychology, mental health literacy, and mental health promotion. And I really love the book, Implementing Mental Health Promotion, which came out of the UK and really was instrumental in writing that book. Another issue is that OTs, not in every state are we considered certified mental health providers. In Ohio, we're not. In Maine and Illinois, OTs are licensed mental health providers. But one of the things I like to argue is that there's nothing stopping us from being leaders in mental health promotion, which really fits with what we do as occupational therapists because we are strength-based. And so when we look at the literature on how to promote mental health, some of the literature that crops up initially is really this whole concept of participating in enjoyable and occupations and in experiences that induce positive emotion. This is Fredrickson's work, who is an emotions theorist, that as we engage in the things that we love and we do more of that it really builds habitual modes of thinking in terms of mental health and helps also to help us be resilient in the face of challenges. So one of our challenges as OTs is to really think of what occupations or how do we design occupations that bring about enjoyment. And one way is to listen to the people we serve. And I did that for my dissertation research. We've been running the OT groups for Hope for over 10 years. And it was several years ago, before I even read much about positive psychology, that we named these groups Healthy Occupations for Positive Emotions. And we named the groups that because that's exactly what we saw. When we engage children in things that they enjoy, they're happy, they feel good. And so when I interviewed the children, and by the way, these groups, it's a part of a service learning initiative that we focus on healthy hobbies and interests as well as social emotional learning. And many of the students here have helped implement these groups. But when I interviewed the students and the children, and I asked them, when you think of the groups, what first comes to mind? And they all said fun. They're fun because of the activities, because doing challenging activities, working together as a group, activities that allow for choice, activities that provide that just right challenge, not too hard, not too easy. That's what makes these groups fun. And many children living in low-income environments are occupationally deprived. They don't have opportunities to do fun, creative activities. The other thing the children said is being part of a group where group leaders are positive, caring, and create supportive environments. One child said they're kind of like a teacher and kind of like a friend. And here's a group of boys who had never been camping, and the OTs had this wonderful group where they pretended they were going camping, and you can see the joy on their faces. And the last thing that the children said is the groups were special, or meaningful, because they were able to talk about their feelings. One girl told me, "I get to talk about my feelings, I get to." Not all children have opportunities to talk about their feelings, and that's an important part of being mentally healthy. And then finally, children indicated, and we call this occupational function, that participation in the groups transformed their mood. They felt happy and energized and were able to forget about their problems. One girl said to me, "I forget about being grouchy." We also observed that through doing enjoyable occupations together, that relationships were formed and close connections. And you can see that in this picture here, the close connections in this group. So that brings me to other strategies. There are many strategies for promoting positive mental health, and I gave you a handout. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are many strategies based on research that help people be mentally healthy. Having caring connections is important. Focusing and talking about feelings and processing feelings is important. Fostering character strengths. A lot of our therapy world focuses on skills and what people maybe can't do. But fostering character strengths tunes into those unique strengths that help define a person. And in my work with children with disabilities, I've worked with some children who've been the most brave, persistent people that I've ever met. So make a point of looking at these strategies and thinking about them. The last one is positive institutions. Think about how you can create environments that help people thrive. So some other strategies, just really quickly, we talked about tuning into mental health, but in your workplaces, look for committees and that maybe have something to do with mental health or wellness. Join them, be a part of it. Collaborate with other health educators if you're in school, or nurses or other mental health providers, and certainly read and share information about mental health from reliable resources. So I suggest NAMI, SAMHSA, as well as the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health. Of course, look at our Every Moment Counts website. Under the Embedded tab, we have Moments for Mental Health, and all of these are based on research that supports how to be mentally healthy. Another one is Actions for Happiness, that really focuses on 10 actions for being mentally healthy, supported by research. So that's a great one as well. And just a couple points about mental health literacy. Mental health literacy was developed by JORM in Australia, and I think they're, in some ways, when I look at some of their websites, they're a little bit further ahead than we are in terms of talking about mental health promotion and mental health literacy. But what this means is really providing people with that working knowledge of what mental health is and mental health disorders, how to foster mental health, how to recognize when you're becoming unwell mentally, and knowing where to go to get help. And so I'm going to share a video from our Every Moment Counts project. This is Leslie Kinder, who is an occupational therapist at Willoughby Eastlake Schools, and she's doing a group that's focusing on happiness for students on the spectrum. She used a program to guide her from the behavior textbook, and is really teaching these young boys, they all happen to be boys, what happiness looks on the outside, what it feels like on the inside, what makes you happy, and ways to calm down when you're not so happy. So let's check this out.
Mental health is more than the absence of mental illness. It is something. It's feeling good. It's doing well. And that when kids and adults are engaged and love what they do, that impacts their level of happiness, and it impacts the level that they engage in that activity. All of that is really important for kids in schools. Hi, my name's Leslie Falkinder, and I'm an occupational therapist here at Willoughby Eastlake Local School District. I'm working on embedding strategies into the normal school day. Strategies that anyone can have available to them at their fingertips that work on the issues that have already been identified for the students, but also really help kids that are at risk for not doing well in school and not feeling good about what they're doing. So kids that may be at risk for developing mental health issues. I do a group once a week with the students that are in the classroom. We talk a lot about self-regulation and sensory processing and how that impacts what our sensory needs do that impact our ability to regulate our emotions. The group has really focused a lot on teaching those skills in a very structured way, in a structured setting, with the hopes that as the children become independent self-regulators, they can realize, what do I need to do to get myself back to feeling calm? So those are my goals the whole time, all year. The overarching goal is just self-regulation and to advocate for yourself, for your sensory needs.
One of the things I did with these videos, I asked the OTs to do two things. State that they're an occupational therapist and that they're with Every Moment Counts. I think what's so critical about what we need to do is articulate what we do, and Leslie did that so beautifully in that videotape. So really articulating how what we do impacts mental health. And the one boy, Leslie told me, with the headphones, he really struggled with anxiety, and he was very worried that he wasn't going to make it through this videotaping. That's an added stressor. But Leslie worked with him beforehand, giving him strategies to cope with that anxiety, and he made it through that whole videotape. So that's a part of helping people cope with the stressors that they experience throughout the day. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the book and the foundation, really sharing this public health approach. And so after the book was out, I mean, it looked beautiful. It's a nice looking book that I think, actually. And it actually does have art on it by Seth Schwast, who is a young adult with autism, who found out later in life, in his 20s, that inside he's an artist. And so if you ever want to see some of his work, go to his website. But my concern then, once the book came out, was this whole knowledge to practice issue. That we know it takes about 17 years to translate knowledge to practice, with only a portion of that ever being applied in practice. And, you know, that's just not acceptable, especially when you work really hard on a book and you know this information is important and it should be applied in practice. So my fear was that the book would sit on a shelf, or worse yet, sit in a factory somewhere, a warehouse. And I was thinking a lot about how can I speed this up? And so I went to a 2-day conference on knowledge translation in Toronto. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that researchers and people who publish and do work really have a responsibility to help that knowledge get into practice. We need to create systematic opportunities to do shared learning between researchers and practitioners in order to change practice. And this involves not only sitting at a workshop and passively, kind of like you're doing now, but really active learning. So reading, reflecting, dialoguing, and thinking about how would I apply this in my practice setting. So I had an idea. I thought, I'm going to invite like 14 OTs from the greater Cleveland area, invite them to join me for 6 months. And I want them to read the whole book, digest it, think about it, and think about how they would apply it in practice. So many of my OT change leaders are here. If you could just raise your hand. Tremendous. Working with these occupational therapists, I cast a wide net. I wanted OTs representing wealthy suburban, urban, rural, alternative schools, private practices, the county board of DD. And so we came together, and it was just an amazing, magical group of OTs that really were committed to mental health. And so what I had them do, I started envisioning this building capacity process. Building capacity means a lot more than professional development. It's really about change, and it's about learning in order to do something. Our ultimate goal was not only to build knowledge, build community, but change practice. And we functioned as a community of practice, which is a community of practice is a group who comes together with a shared goal, a shared vision, in order to do work together over time. And what we did was a combination of professional development. They did reading, and we did online discussions, Blackboard discussions. And that was really great because professionals, all of you are really busy. You have families, you're working really hard, and the online discussions gave us an opportunity to do this sharing from home in our pajamas. So we did this, and midway through the process, after about 3 months, Kathy Chiney, who is the related service consultant at Ohio Department of Education, contacted me and invited me to breakfast and said, "I just want to hear what you're doing." And so again, if someone contacts you and asks you to breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, you go, because that was an open door to share some of what we were doing. And she was so excited about this work, she said, "Well, I think there's an opportunity that you can write a grant to support this work." And so I went back to my team, and I vividly remember that meeting in room 12, in the bottom floor of health sciences. And we sat around and I said, "Here's our time to dream. What you know about a public health approach to mental health, what you know about our scope of practice, I want you to dream about what we can do." And boy, did we dream. We dreamt of a project that was really, really big. And we were funded then in 2012 for Every Moment Counts, promoting mental health throughout the day, and it's been quite a wonderful journey. What gives me the most pleasure was that this was not a project that I envisioned. It was a project that resulted out of our shared wisdom, the wisdom of therapists in the field who could actually think about what could really happen in practice. So let me tell you a little bit about Every Moment Counts. We had 3 goals. First, to develop, implement, and evaluate model programs and embedded strategies focusing on mental health promotion. We really focused on that the most. Secondly, build capacity of OTs to do this work, as well as school personnel and families. And then to disseminate broadly using our website. And that was a great idea, I have to say, but I'm sorry, it's so much work. Pinterest, Facebook, presentations, and publications. And what's great about having a grant-funded project, federal money, coming to us is we don't own this. This is your tax dollars, so everything is free and downloadable for therapists to use across the country, as well as even in New Zealand, I heard from an OT. So what we developed, model programs, we decided to develop programs that were developed by OTs but implemented by all, that would be school-wide, that would be embedded throughout the day and emphasize inclusion of students with disabilities and or mental health challenges, integration of our services, and collaboration. So here are some of our programs. The embedded classroom strategies, we have a lot up on our website, and also the McCult program stands for Making Connections and Learning Together, and Robin Kirschenbaum developed that. It's a push-in program into the classroom to really help children learn the social and emotional skills that are important to work together and to belong. We don't want students with disabilities off to the side of the class. We want them truly integrated in the fabric of schools. So let me tell you about just a couple minutes on the Comfortable Cafeteria program developed by Fran Horvath and Louise Demirjian and myself, and sorry they can't be here tonight, but again, creating programs with therapists in the field helps ensure that they really are realistic and something that can be done. Our vision was to create a program that would help create positive environments for students to eat their lunch and socialize with peers, as well as to empower supervisors. Most cafeteria and recess supervisors don't get any training at all. And so without training, when they're supervising large groups of children, like 200 at a time, they're basically functioning in a reactive manner. We didn't want that. We want to empower them to help create a positive environment. So we know OTs can't be in the cafeteria every single day. That's ridiculous. But we thought, well, what about a 6-week, 1-day-a-week program to really prime the pump in order to create a different environment? We have a theme for each week, and instead of focusing on what we don't want to see, like bully prevention programs, I support them, but we can't just teach children what we don't want. We have to teach children what we do want. We want children to learn how to be a good friend, to respect differences, to include everyone. And in the cafeteria, we want them to learn how to have a mealtime conversation and make healthy food choices.
I learned that everyone has different feelings and different friends. That you have to be helpful and not to make fun of people, not bullying, and be yourself. Be kind to your friends. Stand up for them. Use good manners. Help other people.
The whole purpose of the Comfortable Cafeteria program is to create an atmosphere in which children enjoy their meals at school. An important part of my job was to educate the cafeteria supervisors about how to accomplish this. It was a school-wide approach, so children with and without disabilities participated in it.
Hi, I'm Dawn. I'm a cafeteria supervisor at Parma Community School.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and we've been working with the occupational therapists to provide and promote a comfortable cafeteria environment.
I think the program has increased normal conversation with the children. They like the intervention, and I think they look forward to it.
Yes, and I see the attempts from the kids to try new things and to scatter to different tables to make friends with the other children. I thought that was really great. I think it's helped me in the sense, outside of the children that we're working with the program, I will implement it in the other grades. I'm always trying to encourage them to try something new. Why don't you go sit with that friend over there? I see that there aren't too many people over there. Why don't you go sit with them? And then you can learn more about them. And so it's great for me to encourage them. This is what needs to be done.
Sometimes that's all they need is a little
Right.
encouragement. This is their social time, and this is the time to make a difference.
Hi, my name is Ashley Rabin. I'm the speech therapist here at Parma Community Elementary School. I had the opportunity to collaborate with the occupational therapists at our school in implementing this program. I've definitely seen a huge impact in the cafeteria. The students are excited to go to lunch. As the speech therapist, I found the most valuable part of this program was how it really fostered valuable conversations. So it really made them aware of appropriate things to talk about. Healthy conversations during mealtime is a life skill that you'll have to have forever. So explicitly teaching it during this program is such a valuable experience for these kids to have. Yeah, there were a few students on my caseload, and I had noticed a definite change in them from the beginning of the year until now. They're more comfortable sitting with their peers, they're having more conversations, they're more comfortable eating around their peers, and I've definitely seen an increase in these positive behaviors in some of my students.
Okay, what was interesting about that, the second time Fran did this program, is she invited the speech-language pathologist to do the program with her. And the speech therapist initially said she didn't know why she would be in the cafeteria, so she really had to be convinced. But, really is the place where children learn how to have conversations. Okay, so how do I get back? Oh, there we go. Okay, oriented. Don't you just love kids? We asked them about the program, what did they learn? And they really learned a lot. We're talking in 6 weeks. So it's really planting seeds for creating a culture of getting along, accepting differences. We also see, you heard from the supervisors, they really got it. This is the time to help promote positive behavior. So the Refreshing Recess program was developed by Becky Moeller, Shannon Kearns, who are here tonight, and myself, and we consider it the sister program, where it's pretty much the same thing. It's a 6-week, 1-day-a-week push-in program to really promote active play. There's so much research on the importance of activity and movement for our children and how active movement helps with attending and their academics. Teamwork, friendship, and inclusion, and again, helping supervisors do their job. So each program has a vision statement about what we want to create, and that's the carrot, that's our goal. And each week has a theme. So if you go to our website, all the materials needed to implement this program are on the website. We're seeing occupational therapists in Wisconsin and Chicago implementing these programs. In fact, at AOTA this year, a group of OTs in Chicago implemented the cafeteria program in an alternative school, and they noted a 27% decrease in office referrals. So we've collected other data, which I won't have time to go over. So we won't have time for the video here, but just know we've got lots of great videos that are all about 2 to 5 minutes long depicting these programs. The last model program that I want to spend just a couple minutes on is a program that we envisioned that would focus on leisure participation. The vision is that all children and youth have a right to participate in and enjoy healthy hobbies and interests. And this is so critical because many children with disabilities don't participate as much in extracurricular activities. But we know from research that when a child participates in at least one activity, they do better academically, socially, and emotionally. So what did we do? We got together about 20 OTs, and we started thinking about how can we really strategically foster participation during out-of-school hours in community-based settings as much as possible. So what we did in our pilot project, which really involved 2 years of working together, is to think about a systematic process where we can really bring about participation. And so here are the phases that we came up with, and it's starting the conversation, talking about the importance of leisure. The second one is really interesting. We have lots of leisure inventories and standardized assessments, but we found that using the inventory was actually an educational kind of strategy that many children didn't even know, or families, what kind of leisure activities were out there that they could participate in, such as pottery. And one young boy was like, pottery, what's that? And so they went to the website, they looked at pictures of pottery, they explored community-sponsored options, and he actually signed up for a pottery class in a rec center and just loved it. So this is a little bit of our process, and we've had great outcomes. So in these pictures, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, Jenny Negri and Julie Marshall at Cleveland Clinic Outpatient Pediatrics. They developed a group called Game Break, and they invited children, all with disabilities, who they saw having some issues with social interaction, challenges in making friends. Some struggled with anxiety and bullying. Some had never had a play date. And so the game group, they called it Game Break. Each week they learned a new game, and of course during that time worked on important social skills and things like how to be a good friend. David Weiss, who's in the front here at PEP, worked with a young boy in the upper right-hand corner, Kelson, with significant behavioral challenges, autism, and anxiety. And he really didn't have an out-of-school leisure activity. And David was able to get him involved in adaptive sports through the Achievement Center, both soccer and football. And it made tremendous difference in his life. Mary Lou Kennedy worked with Dory, a young girl on the lower left with mitochondrial disorder, and really worked with her to help her build her confidence in swimming in order to join a competitive swim team. And again, this transformed her confidence and her social interactions as well as her physically. And then on the bottom two right pictures, Julie Rises at Solon School worked with a young girl with spina bifida who had a fine motor goal on the IEP. And when she explored what she wanted to do in terms of leisure, she said, I want to be able to learn something I can pick up at home on my own. And so she was admiring her scarf, and she said, do you want to learn to crochet? And she said, sure. So she taught her how to crochet, how to make a scarf, and also she was interested in cooking and took a cooking class in the community. So it can be done. So the second goal of Every Moment Counts was building capacity of OTs to do this work. We knew that we could create model programs, a website, lots of wonderful materials, but if OTs did not have that foundation of a public health approach to mental health, that maybe they wouldn't do that work. So we replicated the building capacity process, that 6-month process, throughout the state of Ohio over 2 years, creating, developing about 230 change leaders. And what was wonderful was my original leadership team really were the leaders in implementing these communities of practice. Of course, we did research to look at outcomes. We did a mixed method study looking at pre and post surveys of knowledge, beliefs, and actions related to addressing mental health, and we collected qualitative data in the form of reflections of the experience. And what we found were statistically significant changes in knowledge, belief, and actions, as well as qualitative data that really extended those findings. Therapists were thrilled. We asked at the end to write, I gave them a half piece of paper to write about the meaning of the building capacity process, and they filled both sides in many cases. They felt energized. They used words or phrases like we were reconnected to our mental health roots. They felt, someone said, it gave me permission to address mental health again. What we found is that their increase in knowledge and skills gave them the confidence that empowered them to articulate, advocate for, and implement practice changes related to mental health. And this was published in the November-December AJOT. After the communities of practice, we have observed many ripple effects. And sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, I hear from OTs across the state and across the nation telling me about the good things they're doing. About 1.5 years ago, Elisa Deininger, Sarah Kolick, and Denise Young, who are on that table over there, called me and they were still meeting and talking about what kind of needs they had in school, and talking about a lot of the anxiety, the issues of anxiety that they were noting in the children they worked with. And so they had this idea to come up with a program that they named the Calm Moments Cards program, that would be simple strategies to teach teachers, paraeducators, other people in school, to how to interact with children who are feeling anxious due to situational stressors. So they developed 17 cards based on situational stressors like the start of the day or taking a test. Each card has thinking, calming, and sensory strategies based on research that they could apply. The response has been overwhelming. We thought we wanted to do this study with about 30 participants. We have over 100. There was such a need for teachers to learn about, think about how to interact with youth. And our findings, which will be reported by our students, who I have listed here, working with us on this research project, will be presented at their research day in a couple weeks. So thank you for your leadership. So it's been exciting to see what's happened as a result of Every Moment Counts. So Every Moment Counts, it's been quite a journey. In some, it's a huge success, being recognized nationally. We've made over 30 local, state, and national presentations over 2 years. I've had the joy of seeing the leadership development of my colleagues here in the Cleveland area, who have just been unbelievable, and observing the replication throughout the country. So I do believe reclaiming our OT roots is possible. There are no excuses. So getting back to this distinct value, document. Our charge was to develop collateral materials to address OT's role in mental health. And of course, knowing what we were able to do with Every Moment Counts, I had a good idea. I thought it was a good idea. Let's expand the scope of this document to address mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention in all practice areas, making it relevant to everybody. And when I went back to AOTA and we had a conference call about each work group and what we were doing, there was kind of a pause and silence. And the response was, but we want this document to be about mental health. And I said, you mean interventions for people with mental illness in mental health settings? And they were like, yeah. So, I really had to think about how I was going to respond to that. I did go back to my group, and we were very committed that we knew it was important to bring this framework to all occupational therapists. And I'm not always a very political person, but I had to get counseling from my husband, as well as a colleague of mine at AOTA. Of course, I didn't want to step on any toes. But here we go back to how do we frame, OT and mental health, and how does that limit us? Well, of course, we got our way, eventually. But I had to really think politically about how much to push and how hard. But this document that you have now does apply this public health approach to mental health. It provides a foundation for you, as well as a table that's very dense. It has a lot of information. What we did is we were able to unearth a lot of information related to mental health in all practice areas, such as and I can't read that good, promoting mindfulness, mental health in older adults, focusing on mental health, yoga to reduce combat stress, increasing well-being and cardiac rehab, and evidence and interventions to address psychological and emotional challenges after stroke. There's a lot of information out there on OT's role in addressing mental health in diverse areas. And what this table does for you is give a compilation of exemplary practice, model programs, websites, evidence-based reviews, etc. So please use this table, go back, read this, and think about applying it. So what I did next is I thought, well, let's try this out. So I said, let me invite some CSU alumni to work with me to read this document, to reflect on it, and think about how they would apply it in practice. And so I called them my guinea pigs, but they're very cute guinea pigs with little Viking hats on. So we did a mini building capacity process and engaged them in reading, reflection, dialogue, and application. And these are the OTs, many of whom are here tonight, representing diverse practice areas from skilled nursing to hand therapy to acute care burns to outpatient children's rehab, Menorah Park, and home health. So we had a meeting in March. It was a great meeting of just bringing together our minds, and then followed up with a Blackboard discussion. And what I found was similar reactions to what we saw with the pediatric OTs. A lot of interest, enthusiasm, and making comments like I felt energized. And Jason Valley brought up a point when we were talking about this, that when OTs are doing work that is really not authentic to our true roots, to who we are, OTs are really not happy about that. And it really is likely to bring about burnout. So, and then I have a quote here from this guy, John Bazyk. When he was reflecting on this public health approach, he says, it gives a structure and a model for being holistic. And I think that's exactly what it is. So thank you, John. Many of the therapists realize that they are addressing mental health and that many of their clients are experiencing mental health challenges due to loss of function, loss of roles, loss of meaningful occupations, stress and isolation. So we all have to address mental health. But many realize that they have to learn more. And some of them began to talk with their peers in staff meetings about planning in-services and what can they do more in their settings. So let me give you a couple examples. Jason Valley, who's here working in skilled nursing, was really reflecting a lot on what happens with the loss of meaningful occupation, loss of identity, resulting in mental health challenges. And he was working with a male, a 68-year-old, 3 years post-stroke, who was still quite involved on the left side of his body. But most of rehab, as he described in his post, really focuses on rehabilitation of that person's arm and function and transfers. But he could see that Steve was really not feeling that good emotionally and maybe a little depressed. So we explored with him, what do you like to do? And Steve loved to play racquetball. So he had him bring his racket club in, took him to the gym area, and he got to play racquetball again, and just seeing the joy on his face and how that really leads to feeling good. So a quote by Jason, "Enabling the client to do what he or she loves is the simplest yet most profound way to promote mental health." Becca Brown at Menorah Park, skilled nursing, working with a lot of individuals who are 80 in their 80s and 90s. She said, talking with colleagues and clients about mental health, it's more than the absence of mental illness, and that everybody needs to focus on mental health. Many are experiencing loss, lots of losses, such as the selling of a house, the loss of a spouse, or illness. So making a point of tuning into mental health, asking how are you feeling, and really taking the time to listen and help them process feelings. Helping them engage in meaningful occupations like crocheting or participating in religious services, or even reminiscing about what they used to do. Reminiscing has an important part. When we think about the things that we even used to do or memories, it brings about moments of joy. Monica Van Neel, who is here, she does outpatient adult rehab hand therapy. Really thought a lot about, and I enjoyed reading your post because Monica says she has 45 minutes of one-on-one time with her clients. And oftentimes in her setting, it's where they have a lot of privacy, which allows for a lot of sharing of feelings. And Monica's quote is, "It's like talk therapy during hand therapy," where they get to talk, and with the touch component, I think is another component, about feelings, about challenges. Monica can point out strengths, foster coping strategies, encourage healthy behaviors, and of course, if she notes any symptoms of mental health challenges, recommending that they seek help. Rachel Schoen, an OT at Miami Valley Hospital, working with patients who have in an acute care burn ICU. One of the things she said is she kind of totally geeked out on the Blackboard discussion. She was so excited about reading that she went to her supervisor and said, "Can I have 5 minutes for the next meeting so I can talk about what I'm learning about?" So again, here is the real desire to be learning about this and applying it. She really deals with families and helping them manage their stress and take care of their health, providing reassurance so they can go home and take a shower and get the rest they need. She creates positive environments to reduce stress and foster coping. And one of the things she stated is that she makes sure that there is structure and routine and extensive education, and all of these things help the patients she works with cope with the challenges that they're enduring. She promotes the expression and processing of feelings in private and safe places. And she mentioned that showering is usually the time when patients talk about their feelings, and she uses that time to really listen and hear what they're thinking about what they're dealing with. When I think about hospitals, patients don't get a whole lot of privacy, right? And so really tuning into those times when you do have one-on-one with them to do that kind of sharing. And Carrington Connections, she makes a point of being there during bandage removal to provide the reassurance and support during that really difficult time. So I do believe therapists can apply this framework in all areas of practice. So some final thoughts. I hope that you can leave here with two things that I feel are really important related to use of our words mental health. One, when you use the words mental health to reflect a state of health, use the words positive mental health and inform others about what positive mental health is and how to take care of it. And secondly, think about mental health as an integral part of all OT practice, not just a small, confined area of practice. So I do recommend using the words mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention, which really helps describe what we do. You have publications on this framework, and the one in your packet, it's not in color, but it's there for you on this framework. So please use this. If you Google AOTA's distinct value in mental health, it will take you to this page that gives a description of this document, and you can download it there. And lastly, here's a quote from Albert Einstein. "Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." So I believe we all have the privilege to know. It's our duty to act. I haven't spent time talking about some barriers, and I hear about these barriers when I talk to therapists. Time constraints, reimbursement issues, documentation of goals. But I know from working with the occupational therapists who embrace this work, I think they would say, there's no excuse, commit to embedded strategies, start small, look for the open doors, keep learning, and basically, bottom line, make it happen. So I hope you can leave here tonight making this pledge to help my dream come true, that I address the mental health needs of the people I serve by, and that you can write some things down and do it. So that's it. So, I can, I will, end the story. Any burning questions? Comments? I know it's late. Thank you for your attention. Oh, John. Okay, John. What's your question?
One of can you hear me? No.
Stand up.
You repeat it.
Okay.
One of the strategies that you didn't mention is to practice this in our own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one of the strategies that I didn't mention is to practice this in our own lives. This is critical. I do think when I read about this, I'm always thinking about my life. And I do work a lot. But one of the things, I love my work. So if you love what you do, that's good for your mental health. You still need balance. So practicing it in our life and demonstrating that, making sure, exercise is another thing. A lot of good information, research on the importance of exercise and mental health. And do we really encourage that in our clients with disabilities? Any other comments or questions? You gonna go out there and do it? Okay, Nancy. Oh, thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. And I guess you know that sometimes we do have to be a squeaky wheel. My interactions with AOTA, what I really think needs to happen next is we need another think tank meeting a 2-day think tank meeting bringing diverse OT practitioners together, and think about the words we use and how we're defining our practice areas. I'm wondering if we need a facelift in our practice, so stay tuned. What's that, David? Little Botox. But I do want to say tomorrow, I'm so thrilled that I'm going to have a panel of Jason, David, Jenny Negri, Monica, and who else? Talking with the students about applying this framework in practice. So we'll see the students tomorrow and share further. Thank you.